what is social emotional learning. And so I really want to start with that. If you can jump in and just tell us a little bit about your background. What are you doing in this field? Let's start with you, Sheila.
I am an early childhood specialist. I currently work for Ready Readers, which is an early literacy nonprofit. We serve more than 10,000 at-risk or low socioeconomic children in the St. Louis city and county areas. We are a small but mighty staff of 7.5, but we have more than 400 community volunteers who help us provide in-person weekly story times with the same groups of kids. The same reader goes to the same classroom every week and builds a relationship with that class and with that teacher. I provide lots of curriculum support. Each child in the program gets 6 or 7 brand new books every single school year so that they can build their own library at home and continue the reading fun. These are the 2 books we've given away in October and November. Every children's book has a social emotional aspect to it, whether it's in the drawings or whether it's in the text. So you just have to know how to look for it. So I train volunteers on how to pull out the important educational materials that are in the stories so that they can kind of focus on those and support the teachers in that, getting kids discussing. I've been doing a lot of work with trauma, and I do a lot of professional development work with teachers and communities around here about the effects of childhood trauma, and working with teachers to recognize what that might look like in their classrooms, how to positively deal with it, and how to help kids who are struggling with that learn the techniques and behaviors that they need to be successful and not be focused on and labeled for the rest of their education career as a problem. So I think social emotional learning is key to any person's educational success, as well as their success in every other aspect of life.
Thank you. Derek, let's hear about what your work in social emotional learning.
Absolutely. So I'm the director of social emotional learning for Peoria Public Schools. I'm also the director of a center we started here in Peoria Public Schools called the Wraparound Center. But as the director of social emotional learning, just responsible for making sure not only our students get those foundational and learn those social and emotional skills, as Sheila mentioned, that they need to be successful throughout life, not only academically, but in life, but also making sure they get the supports, services, and resources they need. And that's kind of what evolved into the development of the Wraparound Center, where my office is located. The Wraparound Center is a one-stop shop. We have a host of social service agencies, mental health providers, and then also basic needs supports right here. Agencies such as a food pantry, we have counseling supports, anger management supports, juvenile probation is here. And their role is not so much as a social service, but to connect those students that may be involved in the criminal justice system with services. So those students come to the Wraparound Center instead of going to the courthouse, do metal detectors, and they schedule those appointments with their officers on the same night. There's anger management or there's substance abuse classes here. And it's really creating an environment to support them versus policing them. So that's been working out very well. And it gives a relationship and connection to the school. And we also have Chestnut here who does the substance abuse counseling, 2 or 3 different social service agents that does the basic family counseling, group counseling, individual counseling. We have OSF, which is a trauma recovery center here. So we also have a trauma recovery program to work with individuals that are victims of violent crime, not only to provide them with therapeutic supports, but also witness advocacy, case management, and then also basic needs. And so there's there's jobs partnership here. And then the last thing I'll just touch on is that what I'm finding with the jobs partnership, what their role is to connect adults to employment services. Our goal for them, what we're finding is not so much to train them, to give them skills, which that is a piece of it, but it's really starting with the foundational, making sure they have the social skills before we send them out to the agencies to be employable.
That goes back to what you were saying, Sheila.
Absolutely. So that's a piece.
It sounds like, so your population, your clientele is more of an adult, or do you deal with little kids?
So both. So definitely with the school system, it's it's our K-12 students.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, but one of the things we found out this is my fifth year in the role of Director of Social and Emotional Learning, but it kind of evolved into, the first year was like, how do we help the students? How do we help the students? And we quickly learned to help the students, we got to help the staff. And then we quickly also learned to really help the students, we got to help their families. And so that's kind of how this whole evolution to the Wraparound Center has evolved.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
may I just jump in here and add, if you don't do these things at my level, when the children are early childhood, then you add on all those layers of things that you just talked about, Derek, that have to be done to deal with the repercussions of people who did not have that foundational training and education and nurturing that they needed.
Yeah.
And then the problems are caused, and then we have to deal with the problems. So my theory is, let's take care of it when they're young and support families and new parents and healthcare and everything that people need. And then you won't have to have a prison system that's, for profit and everything else. Sorry, I'll be quiet now.
Awesome. Okay. Jennifer, jump in. Thank you, Derek. Jennifer, tell us about your experience in social and emotional learning.
Sure. Hi, everyone. And thank you, Linda. I have worked in the field of social and emotional learning, although I've called it different things throughout my career for 25 years. I started as a AmeriCorps Vista volunteer working with a Native American boarding home. And so at that point, I was charged with dropout prevention, but really felt I spent the entire year on their social and emotional development. And it really convinced me that that's where I wanted to place my time and energy. I worked for a good part of that time in schools, helping integrate social and emotional learning into the curriculum. And I was a staff member at CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And then I became a parent 13 years ago. Now my son's 13. And I started looking around for folks who were translating the research in schools into family life and how we could learn from all that good research and translate it into family life. And I really struggled to find anything that wasn't just opinions, but that really had some meat, some research behind it. And so I started a blog called Confident Parents, Confident Kids. And I started to do research in partnership with CASEL. And so the last decade, I've been working on helping families look through the lens of every challenge that they face as an opportunity to hone social and emotional skills in their children and in themselves. I published the book, Confident Parents, Confident Kids, and it has an age-by-stage guide from infancy through emerging adulthood of children's social and emotional development and how parents can support it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to learn from this panel and find out the good work that you're doing.
Okay, well, thanks for telling us about your good work. We're going to hear about Love's good work now. Thanks, Jennifer.
Well, last but not least, everyone is doing so much wonderful work. I was excited to hear everyone's perspective on social emotional learning, and even more excited to share what I'm doing on my side, because it seemed like, we're all encompassing and we will all learn great things today from each other. So I had the benefit of listening to everyone and thought of a quote. It says, "It's easier to raise well children than to repair adults," right? So my work with social emotional learning came a couple of years back. I've been a social worker, MSW, for 15 years, but I've been working with children and families since I finished college in the late 90s. And I found when I was a substitute teacher, and I found during that time that the admin was not connecting with the teachers, and the teachers weren't connecting with the families, and the families weren't connecting with their own kids. And I was young. I didn't know anything about any type of social social and emotional reflection. I was learning, I was about 22. And I said, I want to be a social worker because I want to connect all these people and things. And as I went through my master's program, I read lots and lots of books and learned about emotional intelligence and this and that. And then I immediately went into doing support groups. My first one was a grief support group for a community that saw a lot of deaths in my community. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. And then I went on to several other types of support groups. And then it was an autism support group because I had the benefit. Oh, I'm a child study team social worker for the Newark Public Schools. That means I work primarily with the special education population. And I've been blessed to work with pre-K through 12 in my 15-year career at Newark Public Schools. So during that time, I worked for preschool disabled children for 3 years. And I found those horrific stories of parents who found that their kids were autistic for the first time. And they all had, I had to do psychosocial assessments, and they all had very common things to say, very common feelings. And so I developed a couple of weeks course or support group for early childhood autism, parents whose children have been newly diagnosed. And that was awesome. So my work with children and families outside of my work started to gain, you know, popularity. People knew. So at Rutgers University, there's this in Newark, Rutgers University, Newark, there's a nonprofit that's housed within them in partnership called the Abbott Leadership Institute. They were having discussions about social emotional learning and how can we empower the Newark families? Because as everyone said, like Sheila said, you have the little children, you're training them. Mr. Booth is training children in school, but then when they go home, they're still home with emotionally immature parents, right? So they started this 5 weeks, 6 weeks, it started Parent Empowerment Series. I was recommended to come into this program early on, the first cohort, because of the work that I'd done. They gave me the curriculum. I was like, oh my God, this is everything, my whole career, Jennifer, like everything is all encompassing of my whole career, everything that I've done, every book that I've read, all the work that I do. And so we have, since the spring of 2018, we have graduated about 6 or 8 cohorts of parents and stakeholders and caregivers through Rutgers University and the Abbott Leadership Institute. Not only did we teach the 5 the 5 core competencies of social emotional learning, we provided childcare. The children in childcare learn some concepts as well. And it's a 2-hour, 5 to 6 week series. And the parents graduate through it. They get certificates. We give them gift cards. It's highly funded by something called the Victoria Foundation. There's a lot of funding behind it. It's a big machine behind it. And when COVID struck, we have a wonderful team of trainers and support people around this project. When COVID struck, we went right in and started doing weekly social emotional learning projects and webinars and support groups for the whole 14 weeks from March through June. We were on every week offering different aspects, social emotional learning in the couple and marriage, social emotional learning and home support. How do you know, everything you can think of. When we couldn't do it in person, all the funding was still there. So our director said, hey, what ideas have you had about SEL that you want to do? So each of us as trainers were able to do a new type of social emotional learning workshop. And so from that, I spun off, and now I have a 1-hour social emotional learning workshop that I sell internationally and internationally. And I provide, online workshops on my own independently. And I'm looking forward to growing it as a global movement because consciousness is rising and people need a place to put their feelings. That's why people all online, all out of whack, you're in your feelings, stop, man up, all that stuff, because people don't know what to say. And so social emotional learning gives a language, it gives a safe space. The concept is easy to absorb. It's just so wonderful. So I teach it all the time now. It's infused into my life with my 9-year-old daughter. And we're coming up on our next fall series for 5 weeks. We're going to start, I think it's November 16th. We're going to start the 5-week series yet again. And it's wildly popular and people are always talking about how their lives have changed and will never be the same. And once you give people this language, and we know SEL builds confidence, goal setting, blah, blah, blah. I have I don't know, where's my wheel? I have my wheel right. I usually have my wheel right next to me. My wheel is not here. I feel incomplete. But I usually have my wheel right over my shoulder when I do any type of online thing because it's a subliminal messaging on what's important and where we need to go. But SEL to me, it provides a safe, easy to absorb method and tools to get through life every single day. Grace, gratitude, all that stuff is SEL. I live it, I breathe it, I love it. That's it.